You're listening to Don't Tell Me to Relax, the award-winning, no-nonsense, always friendly, down-to-earth fertility podcast. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist and big believer that fertility care and education should be better. Each week, I sit down with a guest to share real stories, advice, and honest conversations to help you feel better informed. And for care and connection, we have our Don't Tell Me to Relax online fertility community and our clinics in London and across the UK. To find out more about getting involved and working with us, the details are in the show notes. Don't Tell Me to Relax is proudly sponsored by the lovely people at Acupips. Acupips is the original ear seed company founded by acupuncturist Zoe Young. Ear seeds are tiny seeds or metal beads attached to an adhesive and placed on pressure points in the ear. They're brilliant for calming the mind, easing anxiety, and restoring balance. We use them in our clinics all the time. Head to acupips.com to find out more and use the code RELAX for 20% off. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Don't Tell Me to Relax. I am joined by Josh from probably my favourite company name we've ever had on the programme. Josh is from a company or owns a company called Snowballs, and Snowballs is a company that make organic men's underwear with ice packs, I presume, mini ice packs in to help cool testicles to help improve fertility. So, Josh, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. How do you start a company called Snowballs? Like, what is the story that led you to this place?
Hi, Hannah. I'm happy to be here and flattered that this is your strangest company name. Snowballs is basically my story and the story of a friend of mine. We were both in the same situation about 10 years ago, and we were both going through IVF with our wives. And he was particularly struggling. There'd been a silent miscarriage, and they finally found a doctor who said to him, "You need to ice your balls." And so he calls me up and we laugh about it. And then we're curious about it. We start doing the research. And it's somewhat intuitive, but it's why they say to men, don't go into jacuzzis or hot tubs. That's why the testicles are actually outside the body, because we found out if it can be even 1 degree Celsius cooler, it helps your fertility factory produce healthier sperm. So we he started icing, and a lot of doctors will tell you to do that with frozen peas, as they do for post vasectomy. And within 6 months, his wife was pregnant, and they had a beautiful baby girl. So, we kept talking about it, and he said to me, "What if we create a pair of underwear with an ice pack in it?" And obviously, there were some beers happening at the same time, and we thought it was a good idea. And so I kind of ran with it and did more and more research. And there are lots of studies out there that show that it really does improve sperm count, sperm motility, sperm morphology. So about 10 years ago, I launched the business. I played with a few names, and I was slightly worried at first that Snowballs might be offensive to some people, but I think it's been a positive thing because it allows us to talk to, I mean, guys typically we'll joke about these things or like maybe a lighter tone, and also typically it's women in these situations who are becoming basically PhDs in fertility. And here was something, a way we could talk to guys about male fertility and also help them sort of participate in what's often a painful, long, arduous process that's difficult on couples. So we launched 10 years ago, and since then it's taken off, and we get baby photos every month, and it's been a surprising path for life, but it's been great.
And I imagine that as you have been going for 10 years, you must have seen, as we have, a real shift in this idea that male factor is a huge contribution to fertility issues. Whereas I think, a long time ago, it was mainly thought to be an issue for females, and that a lot of the research and the science concentrates on females, but it feels like there's been a huge shift in the last 10 years, 5 years, into more investigations and research into men. Have you seen the same as well with the prevalence of your product?
Absolutely, and it's really, you nailed it, because it's really coincided with those 10 years, and it's been pretty incredible to watch because when we were doing this, we were just a couple guys, sort of, Mr. Fix It mentality. Let's see what we can do here. Um, but then over the last 10 years, it's become more and more prevalent. As you say, it's in 50% of cases, it's, the male has some contribution to that. And it's also, tied up with so many ideas about masculinity, and there's a lot of confusion still out there, and I get it when I talk about this, about the difference between, I guess we call it potency and fertility. I mean, you can be the biggest stud in the world, God's gift to women, and still have infertility. So there's confusion about that, but I think it's more out in the public. There have been a lot of celebrities, from Gordon Ramsay to various, Americans who've talked about this issue. Uh, just a little side note, Ramsay, if you followed it, it's, cooks or people with hot occupations are more at risk for this. So yes, it's completely changed and is still changing, and I think that depends on where you live, but I see that as very positive, and it's also really positive, again, for guys to know that there's something they can do because,
Mm.
it's a lot of the I've been through this. A lot of the frustration is just standing there feeling pretty helpless, particularly in IVF when, she's got all sorts of hormones being shot up into her, and it's really tough. So here's and particularly for guys who wanna think that they are in control, that they manage a situation, and here's something you can do, and there are other things too, obviously, like diet, like, cutting back on drinking, et cetera.
And so, can you tell us about what it is specifically that heat does to sperm health? Like, why is heat such a bad thing when it comes to male fertility?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, that's why the testicles are outside the body, and, our modern lifestyles, and this is still developing science in some ways, and people are still researching it, but just on heat alone, a lot of research has been done. And our modern lifestyles, whether it's climate controlled environments, you never really go out in the cold, or at least a lot of us don't. It's laptops on the lap. It's even diet that can overheat testicles. It's obesity. The more you're carrying around, the hotter you are. So there are a lot of factors that have led to heat increases in the body, and the testicles aren't made for that. They they need a cool environment to work optimally. And a lot of studies have been done that just reduce the temperature of men's testicles for by 1 degree Celsius, and fertility shot up. And that's not just sperm count, which we often talk about, but that sperm motility, which is the way sperm move, and that sperm morphology, which is the shape of the sperm, all of which are necessary. It's also been shown heat to cause DNA fragmentation, which is, as I'm sure you talk about all the time, is an increasing cause of infertility, particularly coming from the male side. So, it's such a simple hack, and, and I just saw my friend with these frozen peas held at the front of his pants all the time. It's like, there's gotta be a better way to do this, and so we kinda wanted something that guys could wear all the time. So these are just boxer briefs, that are organic cotton, easy to wear. I wear them every day because 'cause I've got so many samples, and then there's a little pouch in front and a little heart-shaped blue gel that you might use to put around a wine bottle, or that kind of substance, and it folds around you, and you just slip it down the pouch, and you keep in the freezer for about an hour, and then it keeps you cool for about half an hour. And studies have shown that if you can keep your daily average temperature down, fertility's improved. So it's not about shocking the system really. It's just about awareness and keeping cool when you can. So we recommend, if you can, a couple hours a day. Certainly moments where you're hotter, like after workout or whatever, or in the summertime, pay close attention to it. And a lot of guys have found that just wearing that and being aware of it can, if it's in the front of your mind, you tend to do it. And what I think is also interesting is once you make that small positive step, and I think this is the case in life, but once you make one positive step for your health, you tend to be aware of other things. Maybe I won't have that second glass of wine. Maybe I'll go to the gym tomorrow. Those kinds of things. So it's I see it also as um, a positive psychological step towards a couple's fertility.
And I presume that you have to do this over a period of time, so I presume it must have to be, a consistent use over that time that the sperm is being made within the body.
That's right, and I had no idea about any of this when I first started, but yeah, a sperm takes 74 days to form, so that's about 10 weeks. So you're probably not g if you make any changes in your habits today, you're probably not gonna see any changes for the next in 3 months. So we often recommend to guys, if you wanna really we have guys who wanna track all this stuff and they've been in this and they wanna track it. So test your sperm today or your semen today and then test in 3 months and you'll probably see a change. But yes, it takes 3 months of lowering your average daily temperature.
Hello, I'm quickly interrupting this episode to let you know about our big fertility walk and talk between the 11th and the 19th of October. Over the week, we will be hosting a series of walks and talks and online webinars to provide information, connection, and empowerment for wherever you are on your fertility journey. If you'd like to join us in person for a walk or online for a webinar, all the details to sign up are at the end of the show. And do you know whether it has any impact on infections? I presume not on infections. I presume it must be around the DNA and the kind of motility and the counts rather than any infection.
Well, it's a good point because, infections are notorious for bringing heat,
Yeah.
and you don't always know. So things like even a hernia or even an infection in the body heats you up and kills sperm. So, if you're I'm sure your listeners many of your listeners have experienced this. If you're in a cycle and you're hoping to hit this one, and then somebody gets a flu for a day or two, you almost have to restart.
Yeah.
And that's certainly a sperm killer. So, you know, can it fight a high fever? Snowballs, no, but if you've got a little mild fever, yeah, it can keep your temperature down and hopefully protect you there.
And is there any counter indications? So anybody who should not use this, is there any sort of case where you think this actually could cause more harm than good? Like so what I guess I'm saying is, can too much cold have the same impact as too much heat?
Yeah, it's a good question, and everything we've seen, all the literature we've looked at says no, and I should also say that these packs keep you cold for 30 minutes. This is not like you're blasting their area with heat. And if you wear them, you slip one in, and the first 5 seconds, I would say, are like a cold shower. So, whoa, it's a bit tough. And then, it smooths out, and within 15 minutes, you're hardly noticing it. So there is a minimal level of temperature shift here. You don't want to, you know, put a massive ice pack on yourself all day long. But that's not what we're doing. So as far as we've seen, there is no case where this might have side effects.
Yeah. And so you just use it for that amount of time every day? Is that the sort of general recommendation?
Yeah, ideally you're hitting 2 hours and,
Okay.
lives are busy. So, some guys like to wake up and do it right away. Some guys do it at the gym. Some guys even will wear them into bed, get under the covers, which may be hot. But whenever it's convenient and the idea is, it's pretty discreet. You don't, you just as long as they don't see you reaching the freezer and sticking something down your pants, nobody's gonna notice you're wearing these things.
And what so I presume you can walk around in them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As I said, I wear them every day. I don't wear them with ice packs all the
Yeah.
time, but yeah, it's just like underwear.
You know what I was thinking about the other day is heated car seats, just because it's so cold here at the moment. And I got into a car the other day with a heated car seat, and I was like, "Wow, that is really nice." I was thinking that is not going to be good if you're a man driving to work every day with heated car seats.
That's it. That's a notorious one, and there are lots. I mean, saunas have become a huge thing for
Yeah,
health, and yeah, sure, but not if you're trying to have a kid.
yeah.
So all of those things, hot tubs, etc. But you need to be aware of that. And I think it's interesting too you talked about the last 10 years where male fertility, there's been a lot more awareness around it. There's also been a lot more awareness around cold therapies, and, I think some of the science on that is still, we're not sure how scientific all that stuff is, but yeah, cold plunges, cryotherapy, it's become a big thing for health, and there's definitely some evidence there for the whole body.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's all anything that's anti-inflammatory, as an
That's right.
acupuncturist, we talk a lot about inflammation, whether
That's right.
that's driven by physical or emotional, and so anything that is anti-inflammatory, we suppose is better for the body, better for health.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
And so do you, are you endorsed or do you get, IVF clinics or gynecologists or andrologists, not gynecologists, andrologists, urologists? Do you get a lot of, support and interest from them?
Yeah, that's also been interesting, and, you know, I know you're an acupuncturist, and the the more naturopaths, again, our biggest market is the States. The UK is our second market, and there's been a lot of interest from alternative alternative medicine.
Yeah.
Now, some urologist clinics in the States do stock it and give it to their patients, but I think it's also been interesting to watch how that 10 years of development of awareness of male fertility also seems to be happening in a lot of fertility clinics. And, when I was doing this, there was no discussion about the man. It was like
Mhm.
she was the focus from the start. How are we going to attack this problem? And then I was basically just given a cup and told to go over to the next room. Obviously, that's changing, but, there's still in the medical community this push to drive you straight to IVF, and it's a brilliant, wonderful, miraculous therapy, of course, but there are other things you can be doing, and certainly in the States, and I know to a certain extent in the UK too, it's really expensive, IVF, and so part of our awareness is letting people know there are other things you can be doing, and usually women are, again, PhDs in this stuff, but guys have things they can do too, so I think there's been a slow acceptance in the more traditional fertility clinics of this. And I think the name maybe for, stuffy doctors may be slightly jokey, but that's kind of our point. We're trying to
Mm,
communicate with people.
mm.
And but we have seen it. It's starting to be stocked, and certainly mostly by urologists more than fertility specialists. And there are a few conditions there. Sometimes people wear it for post vasectomy or whatever for healing from various surgeries or injuries.
Yeah, it's interesting because we work a lot with a couple of urologists here with our patients. And often, if we see the referral letters written by the urologists that go to our patients, if we share, excuse me, information, then it is often a recommendation from the urologists here in the UK to ice their testicles. I've seen it a lot on
Oh,
urology
interesting.
letters,
Yeah.
but I have never seen it from an IVF clinic.
That's right, and I think that's interesting, and, the reasons are pretty obvious there that y again, IVF is a wonderful, incredible, and, evolves every month, it seems, but there is an interest there to do IVF at a fertility clinic rather than anything else.
Yeah. And so, for people in the UK to buy the product, do you just sell them directly through your website? Do you stock them in shops here? Amazon, I'm guessing?
Yeah, Amazon on our website, snowballsunderwear.com. We haven't stocked it in shops up until now. We're always looking at that. It tends to be or this or manly cooling, as I sometimes call it, tends to be something that you need to know about before you buy it. You probably not gonna be walking down the aisle and you know, at the drugstore and think, "Oh, there's some cooling underwear. Why don't I do
Yeah.
that?" So, there's usually some education required before the purchase. So, on our site, simplesunderwear.com, you can buy them. We've also got a lot of stuff for guys about other things they can do. And you could talked about inflammation, um, and various supplements that help reduce that. We talk about what's an antioxidant, what does that do, um, and there's also a little book there for guys, sort of a 10-step plan to attack your fertility, or to attack your infertility rather,
Mm,
um, and things that real practical things that guys can be doing that have been shown to work. So,
yeah.
we're trying to also spread the word, just and demystify and destigmatize male infertility.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? In fact, you know what? Last night I was having a conversation with a lady, and we were talking about she'd just had IVF and it hadn't been successful, sadly. And her partner had poor motility, and the answer was IVF. So they did ICSI. That was the answer. And I asked her, well, has anyone done any investigations or any kind of work with your partner in terms of why that motility might be poor, or is there an infection, has anyone tested his hormones, have you looked at lifestyle? And she was like, no. And she'd done
Yeah,
three cycles of IVF. And I just thought, okay, that's, I get it. Like, if you've got poor motility and you're in a fertility clinic, the answer is ICSI. But I would argue that, taking a step back and kind of investigating that further before you went down the road of IVF could be more helpful than just plowing straight in.
absolutely. It kind of blows my mind, and it's again, we're talking about 3 months for one cycle of sperm. Let's give it 6 months to run through this twice or 2.5 times, and see where we are. It seems. And this is also not just about sperm health. This is about men's health. Unhealthy sperm can be signs of all sorts of other things. So it seems crazy to me not to take a moment, as you say, and let's look at this. And certainly, if the diagnosis is motility and everything, all the other markers are good, that seems fixable. Maybe that's my
Yeah.
brain that wants to fix things, but that seems like there are things you could be doing or changing a few habits and improving that, and it seems like it would improve your health in the long term as well. So it's kind of infuriating, but I think this is something that's evolving, or at least I hope it's evolving, um, because it's also just within the couple. What does that dynamic create? It's like we're just sitting there watching her. Is it going to happen or not? And there's such a helpless feeling to that, and it's really tough on couples.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think just more education around this idea of the role that the man can play in a fertility picture. I know it is changing, but I still think sometimes it's like it's not changing fast enough, especially as, rates aren't improving. Whether it's IVF or natural fertility, rates are going down, not up. So it feels
yeah.
like something it's not working, like where we've got to, it's not working for everybody. So more I feel like we need to take a step back and go back to the beginning and think more about health, well-being, what we're doing with our lifestyles, before we sort of go to the place of clinics and all that level of intervention.
Yeah, and it's we see this across all areas of medicine, but
Yeah.
sperm health particularly is a sort of indicator. It's a sort of thermometer or a scale where you can measure a lot of health. And now there are plenty of other things that can cause, poor sperm, and it's not necessarily because you're a smoker that you've got poor sperm. There are plenty of reasons, but it is a good indicator of a lot of different things. And I'm not saying you can fix them all, but have a look, and
Mm.
see what you can change. It's an opportunity for men to to look at their health in a comprehensive way.
I wonder whether have you done any research, or are there any papers on, like, cooling in the case of people with men with varicoceles? Do you know?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
told you the story of my friend who was struggling to conceive, and this doctor who said you need to ice your balls came back and was the first doctor to look at it, and he had a varicocele. And I'm sure you know the numbers on this, but I think 20% of all guys have a varicocele,
Mm.
and I think 80% of men struggling with fertility have a varicocele. And if people don't know what that is, basically, we know what varicose veins are, the veins we sometimes see in legs. It can also happen within the scrotum, and what that means is that the veins just sort of branch off and often become larger. So sometimes even the valve that closes the veins can't close fully. So blood tends to pool in the scrotum, which obviously blood brings more heat. So it's the heat in that case that's doing the damage. And the good news is, if people are aware of this, a varicocele extremely easy to fix. There's either surgery or another non-surgical procedure that can remove those, and it's really easy. It's real painless. So guys should be aware of that. And how do you know that you might have one? I mean, they often in the literature describe it as looking or feeling like a bag of worms. So, it's basically the veins just branching off into
Mm.
multiple veins. So, and that's a real quick doctor's appointment can tell you that.
Yeah, but so often not men aren't examined, are they? Men are
No.
not examined, so if you don't know that you have one or you can't it's not noticeable, you might not even know that. But yeah, it does make sense that it would be really helpful in that case, in those
Yeah,
cases.
and there are also 3 grades of varicoceles, and grade 3 is obvious. You probably know, you feel that something's different there. And then grade 1, you may not even feel it,
Mm,
it's in its early stages. So, it's definitely worth checking out, particularly if you've gone through a couple cycles, or particularly if you've been trying for a year and nothing's happening.
mm. Okay, Josh, is there anything else that you'd like to say or tell us about the product before we scoot off? Anything that we've not
No,
covered?
well, it's a pleasure to be here, thank you, and your listeners, if they would like to try Snowballs, we can give them 10% off on the site with discount code Hannah. Um, and then I also mentioned this guide to male fertility. It's sort of an action plan, a 3-month action plan the guys can follow, and it's just real basic, clear information about what food you should be eating, what food you shouldn't be eating. It's about what supplements actually work and how much of that supplement do you need to take. Um, Basic things that guys can be doing to improve their fertility. So, that's on our Instagram, which is Snowballs Underwear, and also on the website, snowballsunderwear.com.
Okay, great, Josh. Well, I will put all those details on the end of the show because I'm sure lots of people will be interested to find out more. So thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you and thanks for your time today.
Great to meet you. Thanks a lot.
We hope you have found this helpful. If you'd like more on fertility education, please see our Teaching to Conceive free course linked at the end of the show. You'll also find the link to join our community. For more personalised fertility support, you can work with us one-to-one in clinic and online. You can book a discovery call to find out more.